In this video, I really want to explore the summer solstice. If you're watching this in real time, today actually is the summer solstice of 2025, and I'm really excited because I've been hosting in-person gatherings for pretty much every Sabbat. Maybe I think I missed one in the last year, so since summer solstice of 2024. So for this year, starting today with the summer solstice of 2025, I really want to commit until the next summer solstice of doing a weekly YouTube video on something related to what I'm working on in my kind of world of Witch Be Well. Maybe it's my herbalism study or something like that. So I wanted to make that commitment today here on the summer solstice of 2025. But in today's video, I would like to talk about the summer solstice, if it's something you're new to, a little bit about the themes, how you can honor it and work with it. And I do have a whole video just on the wheel of the year, and so the summer solstice is part of that wheel. So if you want a more general overview of what the wheel of the year is, you can find that on my channel, and I will link it as well on the video as well as in the description. So let's get into it. So the summer solstice, it's going to vary every year a little bit. It is an astronomical holiday, so it's based on the sun. Generally, it's around June 20th to 22nd in the northern hemisphere. So remember, in the southern hemisphere, they're going to be completely kind of opposite. So they will be going into the winter solstice when we're going into the summer solstice. But up here in the northern hemisphere, it is between June 20th and June 22nd. People call it midsummer because kind of in the older times, they actually viewed kind of summer to start a little bit sooner. And I think folks who live in like warm climates like I do in North Carolina can kind of relate. Like, it feels like we're already very much in summer. And so sometimes they celebrated a little bit kind of earlier, the start of summer, because it was more based on like agriculture and weather or like what was around them. So this is also commonly called midsummer, although technically the summer solstice is the astronomical beginning of summer, like the official season of summer. It is also known to some as Litha or Letha, and that is a newer term from what I understand. Kind of Wiccan religions and the people who put together the Wheel of the Year kind of layered that name onto it, but the word itself is not new. The word, from what I understand, comes from Old English, and it means usually June or July. So it may just be related to the time of year that the solstice happens. But I don't know that it was a term that was being used back in the day to talk about the summer solstice. So the term itself being referred to for the summer solstice is newer. So choose what resonates with you or do some more research. I tend to just call it the summer solstice. Remember, even though it is one holiday or one day, you can celebrate throughout the season. So my intention is I celebrate summer solstice season and themes and elements throughout the whole summer solstice season until we hit the next holiday on the Wheel of the Year, which will be Lugnasad in August. So astronomically, what's going on? Essentially, the sun is kind of at the highest point for us that it's going to be all year. So we are tilted in the northern hemisphere, the closest toward the sun. So that is 23.5 degrees. So that's the closest we're going to get. And so the sun is maybe not directly like direct ahead at noon, but depending on where you live on the northern hemisphere, it will be closer to that. But it will be the highest that the sun will be on your horizon for wherever you live. So it kind of rises and sets the farthest north that it ever will. It is technically considered the longest daylight hours of the year, so we get our longest day today. And interestingly, from here on out, the daylight, although we may not notice it, is actually getting shorter until we end up back at the winter solstice, which is the shortest daylight hours of the year. So although this is a holiday that we'll kind of get into, talks about like gratitude and abundance and fertility and growth, right? You look around, the plants are really flourishing, the produce, the fruits, the animals, like the babies have been born, right? Like there's lots of growth and external energy and abundance and vitality. However, when we actually think about what's happening, is we're actually going into the darker half of the year. So as I'll talk about, shadow is very important to me and how I celebrate this holiday as well. Now, as far as what evidence do we have for summer solstice being practiced, throughout time? As I've said in the Wheel of the Year video, we don't have a lot of written records of how ancient folks practiced this. And a lot of what we do have that is written came from writings that probably came after the people who were actually practicing, and they may have been Christian or just not of the same group. So it's hard to know like how accurate it was and what was going on. However, we do know that monuments such as Stonehenge, which is quite old, 2500 BC was when the actual stone circle that we all know well was created. dated, but the actual first monument was more like a hedge monument. It was like a ring-shaped bank and ditch in the Stonehenge area before the stone pillars were erected. That's actually about 5,000 years old, but then about 2500 BC is when the stone circle was erected. And we know that on the summer solstice, the sun is going to rise just behind the heel stone in that part of the stone circle. And so its first rays on the summer solstice morning shine into the heart of Stonehenge. So only once a year. Similarly at Newgrange, which is in Ireland, which is actually even older than Stonehenge, that sunlight coming into the chamber and lighting it up is actually on the winter solstice, and it's only one day a year. So we know that people were looking at these holidays, these times of year, whether they were marking time, whether they were celebrating it or honoring it. We just don't really know how they celebrated them, but we do know that they obviously built a monument where like only that on that one day the sun shone perfectly kind of into the center. So we knew it was important in some way. We just don't have the details. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is honoring the summer solstice in a much more newer way, or in a more metaphysical way, of taking what we see in nature around us and using that in our personal lives to kind of for personal growth, or for connecting to nature, for kind of bringing in the rhythms of the season into our lives. So what I talk about is certainly not what was necessarily being practiced thousands of years ago, but the fact that we're honoring and noting the summer solstice and it's important to us is not new by any means. In ancient Egypt, at the pyramids, when you're viewing it from the Sphinx, the sun is going to set squarely between the Great Pyramids of Khufu and Khafre. I apologize if I butchered those names. And so the sun will kind of set squarely between those points on the summer solstice. So again, we have this idea that some great monuments are lining up with the sun's energy. So again, it's not a new practice that this has been honored. We're just going to kind of take it into the modern time and think about what kind of metaphysical properties could we give to this time of year based on what we're seeing in the summer. So do we know anything about the practices? So there are some things that we can bring in at this time. So one of them would be using honey. So it's kind of interesting that, you know, right now there's bees, the honey is being made, it is being harvested. So that would have been the same years and years ago. And we know that ancient Romans, a lot of the pagans used to make honey cakes. And then we know a lot of Northern European traditions, they would actually make mead, which is like an alcoholic honey-based liqueur or liquor. So there definitely was some celebration of bees and honey, because if you think if that's abundant, then maybe other things are abundant, right? That means your flowers are being pollinated. And so it's kind of a representation of abundance and fertility and harvesting all of the amazing things and abundance that the world is giving us to survive on. And the full moon actually in June is often referred to as the honeymoon or the mead moon. Now, if you don't know anything about any of this, you've probably heard of a honeymoon, right? And normally that's after folks get married, they go away and celebrate the fact that they've just gotten married. And so there are some writings that kind of think about like, where did that come from? If it was the name of the moon in June, why is it the name of this time period after a wedding to celebrate? So a couple of things, they said, well, it could definitely be relating to the harvesting of honey. And so this is considered the sweetest moon of the year because of the honey. And so they kind of took that out and said, well, if it's the sweetest time of the year, let's make that the sweetest time in a couple's lives is right after they get married. So they thought maybe that's where it came from. They do say the word honeymoon, like referring to the period after marriage, traces back all the way to at least the 1500s in Europe. So they think it might be tied to it because a lot of people got married in June. And so honeymoons typically occurred during the month when the moon was called honeymoon because they got married in June. But again, it could also just be because they say it's the sweetest moon of the year, and so it's the sweetest time of a couple's life. So that's kind of a fun tidbit there. So using honey, in your beverages, in your baked goods, or just honoring the bees or doing something really nice for the bees and the pollinators could be a really nice way to celebrate this season. Generally, bonfires, I think you can't ever go wrong with incorporating fire into your practice. So safely, of course. But we definitely know that a lot of times these holidays were marked by communities and bonfires, and we know it's a solar type of holiday, right? It's about the sun, and so incorporating flame and fire and heat would definitely be warranted. So that's another way you can incorporate perhaps some more ancient traditions into the daily times. You can work with kind of in a metaphysical way, fire being releasing, so to let things go, or fire to be igniting, right? To bring things in and light a fire under whatever it is you're hoping for this next 6 months. We do see kind of around this time, there are other festivals around kind of ancient times that correlate to this time of the year. Now, they're not necessarily summer solstice festivals, but we have Vestalia, which celebrates the goddess Vesta, and that would be in ancient Rome. She is a goddess of like hearth, family, and home. So we do see some people layering that onto their summer solstice practice, where they're maybe doing protection and home blessings, especially during this time of like abundance and fertility. So kind of blessing of the home. We see in Greece there was a celebration of Kronos, and he's the god of agriculture, which again makes a lot of sense, right? Things are, you're hoping for good abundance, and you're harvesting your crops, and you're getting vegetables and produce and all those things. So that would make sense. So a lot of people may work with like seasonal foods, and that's always a great option of what's in season, going to your local farmers markets, supporting folks who are working the land in a sustainable way near you, and using those foods in your cooking or hosting a gathering with those foods. So that's another wonderful way to celebrate and maybe to honor some of like the themes that were traditionally practiced during this time. So there are other practices throughout the world that were practiced around this time. So in Sweden, they would put flowers under their pillow to dream of future partners, because again, we're kind of we are at the halfway point of the year. So we're kind of divining, well, what's my next 6 months? Will my partner show up? So that is happening in Sweden, or at least used to. In Lithuania, there was a bonfire, and they would do kind of 3 wishes. So a wish for self, a wish for family and friends, and a wish for country. And they would throw those wishes into the bonfire to ignite them for the community. I thought that was really beautiful and could be really nice practice. And then in Bavaria, I read that some people will put flowers under the table to draw in love and abundance into the home. So again, we're maybe seeing a little bit of a connection to like Vesta and the home and hearth, of doing things in the home to protect it from things that you don't want, and things to bring in what you do want. So abundance, fertility, and love and kindness and things like that. Some of the history of the summer solstice. Now, I love to layer on different cycles so that people can see what's related. So the summer solstice in metaphysical terms would probably correlate to full moon energy, right? The brightest moon with the brightest sun. And I think it's really interesting because the summer solstice is also the start of Cancer season. And Cancer is home in the moon, and that the zodiac sign is home in lunar energy, or in the moon. So we do see this like water coming in because it is a water sign. So we see the water element with the full moon, with Cancer, but then we also see the fire element. So I like to think about the summer solstice as both the fire and the water. And that's kind of why I like doing shadow work at this time, because that's going to be more of the water element. I'll get more into that in a little bit. But both the full moon and the summer solstice definitely about manifestation, about conscious creation, attraction, visibility, kind of getting out there and being your biggest, boldest, brightest self without apology. You know, acting from a place of authenticity, it's kind of solar plexus related. So for instance, like it's the seat of where maybe self-esteem, self-worth, self-identity, like true identity lives, and kind of acting from that place of shining in the world with your brightest light. So that's the light energy, I would say, from the sun and like the full moon, of being able to live in that way. And I would say if you're looking at the menstrual cycle, it would be part of like that ovulation phase, which would be very similar themes for that. So when we're thinking about some of the themes we can layer on to the summer solstice, you know, certainly gratitude, abundance, and celebration for where we've been the last 6 months. Looking at areas where we are living our biggest, boldest, brightest lives without apology. It could definitely be fertility and celebrating the harvest, both in our lives of what we've been growing and celebrating what we've been growing, what we've been putting our time and our energy into, maybe the progress on our goals or dreams or visions so far that we've had for the year. This is a really nice pause point to kind of check in of where am I, what's going really well, where do I want to realign or pivot, and what do I want for the next 6 months. This is a really nice time to do that. But you also always want to celebrate what you have grown, what you have nurtured in your life, both in your physical life and also like outside, if you're growing things or giving back to Mother Nature as a thank you to all she has been giving to us these last 6 months. And the other thing I like to talk about at the summer solstice is the shadow that I've mentioned a couple times, because again, we have this water element very much involved. And I think on a personal level, where and when I've talked to a lot of people, especially women, I would say, is when we're trying to live our most authentic, full, bold life. You know, when we're trying to set boundaries, say no, when we're trying to kind of authentically live how we feel is best for us, we can come up against a lot of limiting beliefs. So a lot of those things I talked about in the solar plexus, self-esteem, self-worth, confidence, self-identity, a lot of those can kind of get muddled up with limiting beliefs that have layered on over our life, whether it's from thoughts about ourselves, whether it's based on what people have told us, feedback we've gotten, just societal kind of expectations and layers. So like, as we go through this world, things get layered upon us, right? You meet a child and they're like, they don't care what you think. Like, they know who they are and they're going to tell you. But over time, that kind of dims. Our light kind of dims as it gets squashed, beneath things. And so as we're out in this world, as we're out in the summer, living our bold, beautiful lives in the light, that's when we can see our shadow. That's when we can see these limiting beliefs, because we start to come up against them as we're trying to push past them. They start to try to keep us small, even though shadows and limiting beliefs really come from a place of safety and security. That's probably why they are there. They're trying to keep you safe and comfortable, but it may prevent you from growing in the way that you want to, or showing up in the way that you want to. And when we think in nature, again, it's such beautiful connections here, is in reality, when can you see a shadow? You can't see a shadow in darkness. You can only see a shadow when there's light, and then there's something that blocks it. So to me, on the brightest day of the year, our shadows are also the brightest. And so I think we can use the summer solstice light to help us stop dimming our own light. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, to kind of celebrate where we are and then see what's preventing us from getting where we want to be. So I like doing things like shadow work or reflections on like what are our limiting beliefs, what is holding us back from playing big. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, through like journal prompts, or just sitting with it in real time, or you want to say no but you feel like you should say yes, or you're kind of people pleasing a little bit to say yes. Like in that moment, before you just say, okay, yes, I'll do it, could you put a pause and like say, what's going on inside me? Why is it that I really want to say no, but I'm feeling like I need to say yes? And even if you end up saying yes in that moment, just the fact that you paused and noticed there was a disconnect, and that you maybe could explore it when it's safe to do so, that maybe makes it less likely that you say yes the next time. That's real-time shadow work. That's wonderful. And so I think this time of year, it's a good reflection point, because again, we have the sun, very bright reflection, to look at what's going on in ourselves. Where are we based on where we want to be? And I try to do that not in like an outcome goal way, but more like, am I living the life I want to be living? Am I the person I've always wanted to be? And if you're not, or maybe you're getting there but you're not there, is there anything else in your way? And that's where the shadows and limiting beliefs come up. And when we talk about shadows, I'll probably do a whole separate video on that, but in general, people talk about it as maybe the parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at all, the parts that maybe we're ashamed of, the parts that we've kind of like squashed down. It could be subconsciously squashed down. And I find personally that my limiting beliefs and things that keep me small are like my not enoughness, not good enough, like not pretty enough, like I don't know enough. Like those stories also for me live in my shadow, and they came from different things throughout my life. And so I think it's a really nice time to think about that as well during our summer solstice, because again, we're mixing that fire with that passion and driving and going out, and like what water is keeping that down. Like we need some water to keep the fire kind of from burning things down, but like, is the water squashing it too much, right? Is it dimming our light too much? And when we look at the water sign, so Cancer, for example, or just the water element in general, metaphysically, it tends to correspond to like intuition, to deeper knowings, to the subconscious, to emotions and feelings, kind of the more emotional body. And so to me, that's a lot of times where our shadows and limiting beliefs can live. And so combining that fire with the water, I think, is a beautiful way to practice with the summer solstice. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about ways to celebrate this season. And remember, you can do this throughout the summer solstice season, all the way until lunar, which is early August. So some things you can do is kind of journaling on any of the themes that we've talked about. So whether that's on how to bring more possibility, expansion, and growth into your life, and maybe where those things are feeling now and how they could be different. Certainly looking at childlike kind of play and wonder and passion. Those are also very much in this like full light energy. So it could be how to incorporate more of those things into your life, or adding more play or more fun, or how to just view parts of your life as having celebrating some of those qualities instead of feeling more like drudgery or kind of the things that we have to do, like bringing more play and lightness and passion and excitement to what we already have to do every day. And if there are hobbies or things that used to be passion projects, now is like a nice time of the year to kind of rekindle that, to bring up that joy and fun in you. Now you can also journal and work on things related to the shadow aspects that we talked about, whether that's looking at where you're struggling with self-esteem, or you're struggling with self-confidence or identity, or being your biggest, boldest self out in the world, like where you're feeling held back with that. You could journal on kind of scenarios where that's happened, where you felt like you were dimmed or you were playing small, and maybe why or what happened, and process that a little bit. But then also, more than just kind of processing where that's coming from, of like, how might you want to choose to act from a different place, even from in a small way, like in areas that maybe aren't as intense in your life. Maybe it's things at home, and maybe that's a little bit easier than things like at work or something like that. So just kind of thinking about how you can live more kind of in that full sunlight, full solar plexus energy, just like with vitality and excitement for who you are in this world and how you're showing up, and really feeling like you're living your most authentic self life, and setting boundaries and saying no. So those are kind of like some topics of journaling that you could kind of think about, or just food for thought kind of this season. And then, like I said, you can cook with seasonal foods, host gatherings with seasonal foods to celebrate the abundance that Earth has given, especially if you've personally grown anything. That's another great option. Spending time outside is something I would recommend for every holiday, right? To notice the signs of summer around you, which may differ depending on where you live. So looking and noticing for those signs, appreciating them, being excited about them. And that can even incorporate into like the childlike wonder of maybe going for walks a little more slowly, like stopping to smell the flowers or hold a plant or something like that. So incorporating some of those qualities with the more like mundane tasks, but definitely stepping outside more often, even if it's really hot, and enjoying it as best you can is a great way to honor the season. The other thing we can do is do more activities related to the solar plexus. So you can kind of look up different things, but some people, to activate that part of the body, will do core work. They will do different breath work, like the breath of fire, which is like kind of adding heat into that core area, because the solar plexus is kind of above your belly button, below the breastbone is kind of the location. There are certain foods people will use to activate that area, so maybe like more spicy, pungent, aromatic foods or herbs, but you can kind of look up like practices to embody or embolden or balance my solar plexus, and those would be good things to work on during the summer season, because like I said, that light is very much aligned with the solar plexus, as well as everything that's contained in there, all of the qualities of the solar plexus. So when you look up activities, there could be even like yoga positions, or just different things you can do to like both metaphysically and physically strengthen that area. We talked about using honey, so that can be in baking or cooking is a really lovely way, especially getting some local honey, or going to visit a honey farm or a bee farm. Maybe it's getting to know how to have like a bee hotel in your own backyard, or just doing things in general that support pollinators would be a really nice way to get back to Mother Earth during the summer solstice. Another nice thing you can do kind of at the summer solstice, or again, if you miss the day, it's not important, but getting up with sunrise on the longest day of the year, and really being up for all of the daylight hours to just appreciate the abundance and the light and the fertility of that day. And again, it's a good time of year to notice that it's a halfway point. So some people will use these next 6 weeks or so to notice where they've been in the last 6 months, how are they feeling with their dreams or their goals that they set at the beginning of the year, and using it as a point of pause to realign, like maybe those intentions or goals were not a good fit, or if they are, what, celebrating the progress you've made, the growth that you've had, the things that you've nurtured and grown in your life, and then choosing if there's any kind of pivoting or change you want to make to further get where you want to go by the end of the year, or maybe just until the next Sabbath. Another nice thing to do is decorating. So I know a lot of people like to decorate for holidays, and these holidays are no different. So you can decorate with the colors of the season, so the more solar colors. So this could be like the reds, the oranges, the golds. White is kind of a good color all around. You can kind of make it mean anything, but that can also mean obviously the light. You can use dried seasonal fruits or oranges or something. It's technically winter, but a lot of people will view them as more solar because they're very bright and orangey and citrusy. So however it feels to you, you can use them at both solstices. It doesn't matter. There's no rules. It could just be decorating with things that are naturally around you, that maybe like leaves or plants that have fallen, you can use those, or getting fresh flowers or things like that to kind of bolster that summer solstice energy. Crafts like sun catchers, or like stained glass sun window charms, flower crowns, like anything that you can use natural things to make products at home that really symbolize for you the themes that you're most resonating with at the summer solstice. And the nice thing again about these holidays is there's no required practices. It's using whatever resonates with you. So I would encourage you to do that and leave the rest and keep it simple. And then some of the last things I'll mention are tarot cards that you can actually work with at this time of year. You can look up lots of summer solstice tarot spreads if you'd like to do that. I'm just going to point out a few cards that might resonate with some of the themes of the summer solstice, so you can kind of look at those cards, learn about the cards, maybe kind of journal what comes up when you see the cards or read about the cards. So the first one, probably more obvious, would be the sun card, right? Just the fact that it's very solar and fire energy. And a lot of the traditional pictures, you've got like a child on a horse or something, like kind of parading. So there's a lot of like celebration and victory and success, a lot of like living vulnerably. I mean, a lot of times the child is like naked. So kind of like being vulnerably and kind of your true barest skin out in the world. Kind of having success, being bright. There's definitely a lot of like childlike play and fun incorporated in the card. So lots of good summer solstice themes to work with that card, of how you can kind of build your inner sun, your inner fire during this time of year. It also has a sense of like liberation and freedom. So there's definitely a lot of those themes during the summer solstice. So thinking about how you can be more liberated, more free, feeling less caged in. You know, the child is usually like coming out and very like excited. So kind of how can you embody those themes is another really nice way to work with the sun card. Another card is the Chariot, which a lot of people will correlate to Cancer. So again, we talked about Cancer. That sign is starting on the summer solstice, so the card has a lot of imagery related to kind of lunar aspects. Traditionally, may not be in the deck you have, but it is about kind of like determination or plotting ahead and being determined to reach your goal, but also using kind of more inner knowing to guide you versus like doing things for external reasons. So very kind of intuitive, self-assured, using your emotions and your feelings to help guide your journey. So it is definitely about taking action and getting to where you want to go and feeling empowered in your ability to get where you want to go. But it's like using all of those kind of watery aspects of ourselves to help guide the journey. It also usually looks like someone who is plotting ahead to kind of towards victory or towards mastery or success. So there can be kind of this like fiery push energy to the card. Again, even though you're using more like intuitive and emotional guidance systems, which I think is a really nice, again, blend of the fire and the water that we see during the summer solstice. And we see a lot of themes of like light and dark in the traditional cards. There's like a light sphinx and a darker sphinx. We also see it's kind of like an ambiance of like control and strength, but then the question is that like a facade or is that real? So a lot of times we may appear in control or using control as a way to support us in feeling safe and secure, but maybe we're not really feeling safe and secure. We're feeling more vulnerable or afraid on the insides, but the outward front is control. So this kind of duality of control versus vulnerability, black and white, shadow and light, fire and water definitely come together for me, at least in this card. So I think that could be a really good one to work with at this time. And because we're at that halfway point of the year, we're really focusing on how do we make sure we keep going towards our goals and our dreams. And this card really is about kind of taking the lead in your life and making the change. So it's taking inspired actions and like knowing you have everything within you that you need to reach your goals and your dreams. So a lot of that kind of more like positive and abundant and fertile energy of the sun, I think, can also be seen in the Chariot card. And the last card I love at this time of year is the Strength card. You know, traditionally you have a person, it's often a female appearing person, kind of with a lion, and they don't seem scared in the card. They're kind of loving and kind to the lion, or maybe just like kind of have a mastery over the lion, but it's not like this domineering force. So it's really about kind of inner strength, this card, not like brutal physical strength. It's about knowing your inner world and finding fortitude and strength in that. So to me, it is very much like a solar plexus card, especially the lion. You're looking at Leo energy a lot, which is very like fiery, and I would say it's related to the solar plexus. So that's a really good card for working on building the solar plexus and finding that inner strength, that inner vitality. So if that's the theme you're really resonating with the summer solstice, the strength card could be a really good one to work with. And it really does speak to not only inner strength, but kind of strength of like kindness and love and connection, almost more than domineering or overcoming someone. And I think that can be a really nice thing to remember with strength and what you have inside you to kind of live the life you want to live, is that it doesn't always have to look like brute strength. It doesn't always have to look like what we view as like classical, traditional strength. It could be fortitude, standing your ground, setting boundaries. Like all of that is a form of strength and having assurance in your own self-identity and your own self-worth. So I really love the strength card right now. And that's really all I have for you for the summer solstice. I hope that you learned something or had something that you took away that resonated with you. Again, there's never anything required for the summer solstice, so take what you enjoy, leave what does not resonate. And I encourage you to get out there, enjoy the sun. I recorded this like throughout a day of the summer solstice, so we've got the sun kind of in all different positions, which is kind of fun throughout the video. But yeah, get outside, enjoy the sunlight, think about the light aspects, the gratitude, the celebration, the abundance, the fertility of your life, of what you've been growing and everything around you, you know, really feeling gratitude for Mother Earth and everything she's been giving us. And every time we eat, you know, being thankful for the folks who were tending the land and giving us that food. And then, you know, at the same time, looking at the shadow and the darker aspects of the holiday, if that's something you're interested in, because again, you can't have light without the dark and vice versa. And, you know, shadows are not bad or evil. Like I said, they're meant to really keep us safe and secure. So when you're thinking about your home protections and the blessings of your home and bringing in what you want, knowing we have to kind of love and integrate the shadows to be able to do that. And to live out in this world in a very sunny summer solstice way, when we come across the limiting beliefs and shadows, that's an opportunity to explore them, shed light on them, bring them to the conscious level so that we can choose if we want to act from them anymore or not. And it's not about getting rid of them or, you know, pretending that they're not there anymore. It's about loving and integrating them and knowing that they're there, but making them part of you and choosing to not act from a place of fear or a place of shadow or limiting belief if that's not something you want to do anymore, if you feel it's holding you back. So choose what resonates. Maybe some of the practice ideas could be wonderful, and I'll try to put a video up for each of the Sabbats. And if you are local in Raleigh, North Carolina, I may be hosting a Sabbat gathering near you. If it's 2025, it is tomorrow. And if you're watching this in the future and it's not 2025 anymore, you can look at the link in my description. I'll just link over to the Sabbats part of my website for when I'm hosting, so you can see if there's one coming up if you're local to us in Raleigh, North Carolina. If not, I encourage you to look around wherever you live, and you can search, you know, summer solstice events or something like that, and there may be someone hosting something near you to kind of gather with people and get other people's perspectives on these holidays. Certainly mine is not the end all be all. It's kind of just a culmination of things I've learned over the years and what has resonated most with me personally in my practice. But definitely continue your research and learn more about the summer solstice. But I send you so many blessings, so much abundance and fertility and growth and prosperity. And although we all have shadows, we can love them, and I wish that you can be integrated with them and just feel whole this year and really continue to march ahead and reach your visions and dreams for the next 6 months. Sending blessings.